All right, what's going on, reef builders? Welcome to another session of Reef Therapy with my good friend Mark Vanderwall. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. It's been a week. Doing
Yeah,
well.
yeah. It's funny because as soon as we finish up one episode and 1 or 2 days goes by, I'm like, oh man, I wonder what we're going to talk about the next one,
Yeah.
and then invariably, like a whole bunch of stuff transpires, and we have plenty to talk about.
Agreed. I
So go ahead.
oh no, I was gonna say I actually, with my day job and working and everything, I get a kick out of your emails, like the email I got today, where it's like these jumping off points that we can start talking about. Where I'm like, ooh, and then my brain starts going, and then I should be doing work, but I'm thinking about what you what you emailed me.
That's like me when I'm going to sleep. I've been blogging and making videos for so long. I've always got like this second narrative of like, oh, I could tell people about this. I could tell people about how this coral is behaving, or this new food, or this new technique for putting power head somewhere in the tank. It's nonstop. Like there's a second voice in my head. It's like, what are the stories that I can, share with the audience that is going to enrich their reef keeping experience?
I'm same. I'm same. Yeah. Sometimes I can't get to sleep till about 2 in the morning because I'm off on some tangent in my head of not necessarily what I could talk about reef wise with somebody other than you, but I don't know, how do I put it? I'm sure other people can relate where you think you're gonna fall asleep and then you have this cool idea or like, ooh, you know what I haven't tried, and then next thing you know it's 2 in the morning. So.
Yeah, one of the things I love to listen to go to sleep is just any kind of like YouTube video about the universe. If I'm thinking about stars and moons and planets, it mentally removes me from all the things I need to think about. It's pretty nice. So I was actually let's we're still in the process of kind of developing a rhythm to each of our weekly productions, and I think we'll try to start off each episode by acknowledging the comments that we've received last week. And I'm kind of really shocked and surprised at two things. One, not that many questions, but two, people seem to be very much resonating with the non-live aspect of reef therapy.
Yeah, I figured there'd be a big push for us to do a live stream, and that's what I've been used to too. Also, just jumping on the YouTube channels where it is a live stream and you're trying to keep up with the comments and everything else. And one, I was happy we didn't go that route initially, but now I also like the fact that it does resonate with people because to me, it's like too many moving parts sometimes, I can't keep up when I'm a viewer reading the comments, so I can't even imagine being on the receiving end of that as well. I give props now to people that do that because I can only imagine, keeping an engaging conversation going while also trying to keep tabs on what people want to hear or want to say, in a live setting. That's got to be tricky.
Well, undeniably the most popular podcast of all time is, the Joe Rogan Experience. I'm sure you've watched some episodes. I wax and wane on how much I enjoy that show, but it's a train of thought and you can stick to it. And there's enough people attempting to do some form of the live stream format. And I just love you and I just going down deep into whatever our thoughts are about the reef aquarium hobby or the news. And, in the future, there'll be opportunities for us to do it live. But I think this is our calling. This is our calling.
Yeah, it might be fun in the future every once in a while to shake it up. I think it'd be fun to bring in, some other people every once in a while to see what they have to say and let them go down that rabbit hole with us,
Yep.
But for now, I'm really enjoying this for sure.
Yeah, no, I think we have a few years worth of content for you and I to really digest.
Yeah.
This is again, reef therapy is supposed to be the antidote to FOMO, to fear of missing out, to just snide remarks on the bulletin boards, or people just not being very cool in an online or social media format.
Yeah, that's the other thing I've noticed too is I don't do this a lot or at all like you do. You know, you have a history on YouTube. I don't. I was a bit anxious about, oh man, what if people just start having a lot of negative feedback? But I was really overjoyed to see that people were enjoying it, but also the comments clearly to me showed that they got what this was about. You know, like they got what we were trying to get at. There was not a misinterpretation between the presenter and the audience of what we were trying to do here.
I mean, I don't think we have a very defined purpose other than that you and me, we know we want to sit down and really hash out the news of the day and the cultural stepping stones that are transpiring for better or for worse.
Yeah. Well, and I like that we keep it somewhat fun and not so serious at times either. I mean, I don't know. When I tune into a lot of podcasts, for me, it's also that I'm tuning out to the world a bit, you know, and just thinking about a subject that I enjoy or that either relaxes me or something I'm passionate about. And so I don't want to jump into this format and be listening or going for a run and I'm listening to two guys talking and I'm getting riled up about something.
Right.
You know? So I like that it's more of I don't want to say lighthearted, but more, you know, we're not.
It's low stakes.
Yes, that's the word. That's a good way to put it.
It's low stakes, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to come up with a solution. But I'm sure many of you are thinking, you know, we're not really overlaying other images or clips. You know, this is really kind of turning into like a video podcast. And the only thing that is holding us up from syndicating this across all your podcatchers is we're just going to be working on a logo. But as soon as that's done, you should be able to find this on all your favorite, podcast platforms. So that's coming really soon. But in the meantime, you have to tune in here to YouTube. So make sure to subscribe to Reef Therapy. And I think we have one kind of sticky topic to talk about with names and what words mean in general. I feel like we could go on for 3 hours just on that, and this is my therapy. If I vent and I get it out of my system once, to an audience, then I can kind of let it go. But today we were given exclusive privilege to talk about the brand new Flagship Reef Aquariums from Red Sea. Took me by surprise, and it took you by surprise. So you currently have a Red Sea, right?
I do. I've got a Reefer 62L XXL is I think the model number, or yeah.
You know what's so funny? Like, they have so many models now. Not just them, but Red Sea, Waterbox, Innovative Marine. I'm just like, yeah, I got a 5-foot peninsula. I got a 6-foot peninsula. Like, I don't know what you call it. Then I don't know what you have calculated the total system volume to be, but I've done my own internal measurements, and I know how much water is in my tank. So the brand new tank being announced today is the Red Sea Reefer S. And it's just so funny how we were talking about the unheralded takeover of rimless aquariums just last week, and all of a sudden we have a brand new flagship aquarium that is not rimless. That is so freaking cool. Did you get a chance to take a look at the web page?
I did. I had some envy. There's a lot of features on it that I like. I'm curious if this is sort of if we're going to start seeing more manufacturers do things other than rimless, because it seemed like every manufacturer went rimless. And I do like I've always called it Euro bracing, but they had a different term for it.
Let's rewind it a little bit.
Sure.
And describe for our listeners and watchers, our viewers, what we're talking about. So the Red Sea Reefer S is 2 tanks, and they really are kind of in the flagship territory. I think Red Sea did an amazing job of describing and promoting and marketing the newest features of this aquarium. But there's Red Sea Reefer S 850, which is a 6-foot long tank, essentially a 180-gallon tank. And then there's Red Sea Reefer S, which is a 1,000 no, a Red Sea Reefer S 1000. That's a model number, and it's a 210 gallon that is 7 feet long. The biggest defining features of these two tanks is they have an all new metal frame construction, so marine grade aluminum. I really hope and I anticipate that will be pre-built. It seems like a real liability to get people to like assemble their own metal stands. It's a little bit different when.
Well, they did it with the Max S, right? Those had the internal aluminum frame, but I think it was a you assemble it kind of deal. So I'm curious if you have to do the same.
Both the Red Sea and the Water Box have substantial investments in the foundation. And I remember when I put together my water box, my 6-foot Peninsula water box, I think I did it very casually, and I watched 2 movies while doing it. Like, it just took that long. I'm sure like an expert could probably slap one together in an hour, but I enjoyed the process. I got to know my tank by putting it together. But let's see. These Reefer S is clearly going to be their flagship line, and it's only going to come with this metal frame stand. Clearly, this is the future of supporting larger marine aquariums. What else do they have going on? One of the biggest curious features of it is it has what is universally known in the English or at least American aquarium hobby as Euro bracing, which is basically like a kind of like a strip that's I guess glued or attached or fastened to the top rim to give it a little bit of rigidity. I think that's definitely going to reduce some of the bowing. And then just a lot of other little things. It has a split sump, so you can do some different things with the sump. It has a slide out control panel. Oh my God, that's super cool. And just a lot of other tweaks that they're trying to harp on, but are kind of standard nowadays. So what was your first impression? Because you just looked at the page like a couple hours ago, right?
Yeah. So I going back to the Max S that they initially had, one thing that I really loved was the aluminum frame stand.
That was optional in the Max S. I think it was option. There's one range where it was optional, and in this one it's standard.
Okay, I thought they had it on like the 650 or Max S 500, but no, I like that. Wood frame stands are great, but they've been around in the hobby for quite a while, but they're prone to humidity issues, right? And you're going to put a sump down there. And so to me, aluminum gives you the advantage that your strength and your rigidity is pretty much impervious to humidity changes, right? Assembly to me, maybe if it does require assembly, it's probably a little more intricate work, but locking aluminum pieces together to me is doing a good job is a lot easier with, I think, that than say wood, because I think we've all assembled furniture before, and sometimes wood chips, sometimes you screw it in wrong or at a wrong angle. Like, you can't really get a wrong angle as easily with aluminum. So I think it's maybe there's a little more work to put it together, but I think the finished product is something that you're going to feel a lot more secure in. My stand is super secure. It's when I put it together, I was shocked at how stiff it was. So mm-hmm. I don't think necessarily there's a problem there, but I do feel like if you gave me the choice between the two, I would choose aluminum any day.
Yeah, no question. And another thing that I found really curious, and I'm probably the only person who's really thinking this, is because I have Innovative Marine EXT aquariums, and they came with kind of like an extruded aluminum stand, so like they're just barely passable for those tanks, and they're supposed to be kind of stiffened up by the panels, but I used none of the panels, none of the doors, and I really like the idea that if someone has more discerning tastes, they're going to be able to put on their own panels. Like, I don't know what the attachment mechanism is to use these marine grade poly ply, whatever they call it, to attach that to the aluminum. But if you can do that, back in the day, like, there was factory made wooden stands that were very cookie cutter, right? You had wood tone, you had light wood tone, you had black, you had white, and then washed oak. I remember washed oak was kind of like the rage in the late 90s. But with this, it really, this is one feature I think I'm the only one who's really thinking about. Like, you could spend $2,000 to $3,000 getting someone to customize these skins that is going to go on this metal frame. I'm sure this appeals to 0.1% of the people listening right now, but that's a cool aspect of flexibility. I think
I've seen a lot of people that do the 80/20 route, and then they plan on skinning it, and then they don't, because they actually get a kick out of having the plumbing on display, right? Like, you spend all this money getting a nice filtration setup going and your dosing pump and everything put, and then you do a lot of nice wiring work, and it's like, you kind of want to show that off, right? I've seen people go that route too, and so I don't think my wife would be cool with that if I did something like that in my house, but I can definitely appreciate the hobbyist that says, you know, these panels just get in my way. I want it out and open. So it gives you that flexibility. I guess you could take the doors off of a traditional Red Sea Reefer and get the same effect, but I don't know.
Well, so for those that don't know, 80/20 is kind of a semi-standardized extruded aluminum framework system, and the sticks of the aluminum themselves are not going to cost you that much, but every single piece and accessory to customize it, that's where it kind of adds up. We've had 80/20 at some aquarium shows before. But, you know, one of the simplest things you can do is something that I see at Aquatic Art. He's got a steel frame stand, and man, he's just got a couple magnets mounted top and bottom, and he's just got wooden panels with, you know, little pieces of metal, and they just slap on, slap off. So that's the thing with the 80/20 or with this new stand. Man, it's almost like a weird opportunity for third-party and aftermarket accessories to really customize the tank the way you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes literally nothing to just, you know, secure a couple magnets and get you know, some thin starboard or acrylic or just something that literally will just pop on and pop off. And but I think that's enough about the stand. I'm sure the viewers and listeners want to hear a little bit more about the tank itself. So what was one of the other features that really grabbed your attention? And feel free to dive into the Euro bracing now if you want.
Yeah, so they call it the fortified internal framed aquarium, aka Euro bracing in my book. But maybe there's some Europeans listening, like, you guys call it what? Maybe they call it non-American bracing. I don't know. But I like that in the sense that my biggest beef with rimless tanks is, you know, I said it in, I think, the first podcast or YouTube, whatever we want to call this
session,
reef therapy session. You get that water within like a 1 inch of that top of the rim, and, you know, powerful power head or getting a little crazy with your magnet, and you got splashy crap and you're wiping everything down. And it's just, I find it hard to keep a rimless tank clean in that regard. I went the other route where I ordered a tank with a water level lower, but a comparable solution is to go with some Euro bracing, right? It keeps things on the outside, I think, a lot cleaner. Yeah, it might help with some of the jumpiness, right? Because you know, a lot of the fish I see, they'll run up the glass and then. Yeah,
absolutely.
Right.
So I mean, this is going to be absolutely a divisive feature. You're going to have some people who just absolutely love it, and some people who have nothing to do with it. But, you know, a few things. One, you know, it's obviously mostly structural. To prevent any kind of bowing, because they're trying to do a little bit longer tank, especially in the S1000 model, which is 7 feet long. You know, I know my 6 foot water box and my 5 foot Red Sea and my 4 foot Innovative Marine. If you look down the end, like, yeah, you can see a tiny bit of flex, which is absolutely normal. But one curious design choice that I noticed is it's black. It's jet black, and they promote it as such. And so I wonder if that's going to actually cast shade on the front glass to some degree, which is absolutely going to depend on what kind of light you have and how it's mounted. But man, if it reduces, you know, the scraping of the glass on your tank even by a little bit, that's really cool. But to your point, like reducing some of the fish jumping, because very few fish, maybe some firefish and some wrasses can just jump out, in place, like right in the center of the tank and go flying. Most of your fish are going to ride the edge of the glass and end up out. Like they're not trying to get out; they're just kind of startled. So that's going to keep some fish in. But I fear it's going to like give people some complacency against having, some kind of good, secure top that absolutely prevents fish from exiting the aquarium.
It'd be interesting too, because there's a lot of aftermarket clip-on things that are all built around that rimless market. So now you're going to have to look at, okay, auto feeders, any of those type of things that are going to have to clamp onto that Euro brace now. That's something that I've heard people with custom ordered Euro brace tanks run into in the past. Is it's mounting things can somewhat be a pain sometimes.
As soon as you mentioned that, as like, I'm not sure if the back of the tank is Euro brace.
It doesn't look like it from the picture I'm looking at right now. Which would help with like the light mounts, right?
Yeah, because I think Red Sea's own reef led mount is for a vertical pane. But yeah, it's not even that long ago that a lot of different lighting mounts had to have the versatility of clamping onto a vertical surface or a horizontal surface. Hold on, I just got to peek at my screen real quick. No, I don't see any Euro bracing on the backside.
I don't either.
So that's interesting, and people aren't going to have to worry about that so much. But yeah, that's a great point. I mean, there used to be a whole ecosystem of accessories that clamped onto just that lip, and some of them kind of went away when we lost that lip without celebration. So yeah, I think that's enough on that Euro bracing. Like I said, it's going to be a divisive feature. What do you think about that split sump? I think that's pretty cool.
I saw that. So they did that in their Reefer 900 as well. And at first I didn't like it, I admit, but then it grew on me. At first, additional plumbing always makes me a little anxious, right? It's another leaky point. But then I also understood why they did it, especially with the Reefer 900, because it gives them another perpendicular reinforcement, position inside the stand. But it also looks like you can disconnect it. It gives you some cool flexibility. You can make it a larger refugium. You can make it an auto top-off tank, a prop tank. So that's pretty cool. I think if it was my tank, I would actually probably remove it because I like having a lot of space inside my stand for equipment.
Right.
It used to be that we would try to fit the biggest sump we possibly could inside a stand, and then you don't know what to do with everything else. So I would... Yep. Unless I needed a top-off unit inside the tank, I'd probably yank it. What do you think? Do you like it? Yay, nay?
You've seen setups for years where the display is mediocre, the sump is mediocre, and people add a frag tank to handle all the frags that are going to go in their mediocre displays. And I'm not trying to hate, but it's the truth. Like the more tanks you have, the less your attention is focused on one thing. And so I feel like... one, I definitely want to mark them down. Like they'd subtract a point for calling an algae scrubber refugium, which I'd like to get to in the whole naming segment and words matter of this session. But in general, I love it. I love it because this is it's going to be dedicated, right? It's like, oh, here's an easy way to have. If it's attached, you can have a real macroalgae scrubber, or an actual refugium, or a little mini frag tank, or just your secondary tank, so you're not putting all kinds of weird junk in your main display. And or just like you said, like the flexibility of removing it or separating it, so you can have a chamber for automatic water changes or non-gravity fed auto top off with lots of failure points. That's one thing I just realized that Red Sea doesn't make is an auto top off.
Well, the Reefer came with a float.
Yeah,
right?
that's not even a thing, man. It is like 5, 4, 3 gallons, so it's good for a few days. You might as well do it manually. But yeah, I think it's really cool, and especially with people paying a lot more attention to the benefits of a real macroalgae scrubber. It just affords a lot of flexibility, man. It's cool. I think Red Sea, again, even the presentation. It's funny how you mentioned how you had like tank envy, but like I already have amazing tanks. But it's weird how like your gears start turning. And it's like,
Yeah.
could I tear this tank down just to set one of these up? I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. It's an awesome piece of kit. Yeah, I think it's going to be very popular.
I think that, and especially this tank being an even better example of that, what I sort of love about the fact that setting up a reef tank has become a lot less DIY. It's a lot less. I mean, it can be, right? My next tank, I'm PVCing it out and all that, but the fact that, the current tank I had, I bought it, it showed up, I put the pre-assembled plumbing together, and I was up and running. It removes a lot of bad ideas that people get when they're setting up their tank, where they go, oh, I regret doing this or that. But
yes. It's weird how it's strange how the pre-cut plumbing is something that they want to promote, but like this is something we absolutely come to expect from tanks like this. Like I said, I have a Red Sea Peninsula, I have a Waterbox Peninsula, and I have a Cade Aquarium. For some reason, it was only with the Cade Aquarium that it really hit me that like I felt some inadequacies as a proficient reefer.
Yeah.
That I didn't have to measure or cut or glue anything. It was just pop and lock. Just roll. But I love your point, how it discouraged reefers from trying to do things that they think are tricky, but will probably turn around and bite them in the butt down the road.
Yeah, I think it's hard to do clean plumbing, and maybe it is maybe it's not for other people. It is certainly for me, but it also levels the playing field, right? It's not like, oh, look at this amazing plumbing job I did. It's like, hey, you and I have the exact same tank. We have the exact same plumbing. We have the exact same sump. Our choices in equipment may vary, but it's really all about what you put in the tank and how you care for what's in the tank, right? So for me,
I love your perspective of looking at it of like, oh, this is leveling the playing field. So now your proficiency as a reef aquarist really has to shine through the aquarium because you're not going to have very different equipment. Meanwhile, I'm over here, I'm like, oh man, I don't get to flex my 25 years of like reef aquarium skills and the pride that comes with proper plumbing. But man, that pre-cut stuff is amazing. It's really, really good.
Well, I mean, what did we have to prove back then, right? I mean, that was, I don't know, like we used to build our own sumps. You did your own plumbing. And
always tweak the skimmer. The skimmer was never good enough out of the box.
Yep.
You had to enlarge the venturi a little bit, or grind out the volute of the needle wheel pump a little bit. Like there's always something to just kind of like make you feel like you really put your touch on it. But I like your perspective of saying, hey, we're leveling the playing field. If you have this tank and I have this tank, then it's not about how it's put together so much. It's more how it's ran.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Just a slight little detour. I'm going to come back to the Red Sea Reefer, but Mr. Sue of Bali Aqua Rich just sent me 4 pictures of, I don't know why this guy like only makes hybrids. The yellow ear angelfish, Polymictus xanthotus from the Red Sea and Western Indian Ocean, has never been bred. Nor has the Griffiths angelfish ever been bred. So what did he do? He bred them together. And dude, this thing looks like a Picasso. It looks like a Picasso fish, and it looks like he has more than one. Oh my god, that thing looks crazy. I wish you could see this. By the time this comes up, hopefully I'll have the green light from Mr. Sue to share these on Reef Builders. So that's another thing we're going to do. Since we're kind of aiming more towards the a vocal experience for the sessions, we'll try to include more show notes that include like pertinent links and articles. And by and large, most of this stuff is going to be on Reef Builders. So, holy crap! When I saw those pictures, I was just like, I had a definite moment. But back to the Red Sea Reefer S, it's nice, man. It's nice, and you're going to pay for it. but I don't think it's as much as a custom aquarium, which is what you would have had to order up, say 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Did you see the prices? You had to click through a little bit more to see the prices.
I didn't know.
So the 180 gallon tank, basically, the 850 is $5,299.
That's it.
That's one reaction. The S1000, which is a 210 gallon display. I'm always going to talk about display. Like, let's just take a little detour right here to like scold these manufacturers who are trying to claim the total system volume as the tank setup. Like, no. No, don't do that. Don't do that. I think Waterbox might be the worst. They kind of put that system volume first and then the display volume like second. It's just weird, like it's a weird slippery slope that we've experienced with these all-in-one tanks where they're, okay, you have this back filter section that might be taking up like 10 to 20% of the system volume. But anyway, it's $5,300 for the 850 and $6,000 for the 210. And man, if you try to piece all that, if you got a custom tank, made your own plumbing, your own sump, and got 80/20 stand, you'd be looking at pretty close to $6,000 as the price of the S1000.
So I'll look at it this way. I just ordered a custom 180. The only thing custom about it is because it's a standard. They make a standard rimless product, right? In a 180. I just had them move the overflow to the side instead of the middle, and I'm asking them to lower it a couple inches, right? So
hardly qualifies as custom, just a couple tweaks, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
Drill the holes over here, put the box there, and make it a little shorter, right? I'm not asking you to change the dimensions of the tank, right? So when I add it all up, and I'm also counting the sump I bought, the plywood stand, right? Not an aluminum frame with a cool skinned, any of that crap. It creeps up into that price range. So that's where I was kind of surprised.
But don't leave us hanging. Creeps up in that price range. How much did you spend on your tank? Are you not trying to let Nicole find out how much it was?
A little bit of both. No. One thing you'll learn about me is I'm bad with numbers, man.
That's fine.
So
it was comparable.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was exactly. It was a little less, but not enough to. If you were given the choice, you would choose one over the other because of cost. If that makes sense. But
it's going to cost you some time and some bandwidth to plumb it as cleanly and as elegantly as
I forgot to count the plumbing.
Well, it's not even
expensive, man.
I don't think so. What are you looking at? Like, bulkheads and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's something we take for granted, man. Like all these all-in-one tanks come with all the bulkheads, all the little things. So yeah, you had that up a couple $100 easily. I was just thinking the tank would ship with the plumbing, and then you'd have to just put in some elbows and some drains or whatnot. But yeah, when you start adding up the bulkheads, a good quality bulkhead is good. It's 25 each.
Yeah,
like each hole that's into your sump, out of your sump.
A gate valve, right, for your drain.
Yep.
And then, what do you think would take longer? Plumbing a tank with PVC and measuring everything and cutting, and then you screw up and you got to cut again, versus assembling a stand, right? I would argue that the cost to your personal time would be less assembling that stand.
Yeah.
Watch a movie like you did, grab a beer,
two movies. Yeah. I don't even remember what they were. They were like low stakes movies, but yeah, so that's something that everyone should really take into consideration. Like you see the sticker price of the tank, you see the sticker price of a stand, maybe the cost of some of these customized sumps, but the investment of money and time and just focus of plumbing your own stuff, that starts to add up. And, it's fair to say that unless you're doing something really tricky, it is a major convenience to just have this, totally plug and play plumbing solution. That's something that I don't think gets celebrated nearly enough.
Well, and what I don't understand, I do understand, but it's not how I think about things, but I see a lot of people get those Red Sea tanks and they
Hmm.
rip the plumbing out and they go full custom with these adapters and everything.
I haven't even seen that.
Oh, it's all over the forums, and I mean, it looks cool, and if they had a blast doing that stuff, then more power to them. But at the same rate, I'm like, was it worth it? I mean, I have no issues with the plumbing on my reefer. It does everything it needs to do. It's got a great return. It's got the drain. It's got the emergency drain. I got plenty of room. Oh, and the other thing I love about these Red Sea tanks, and I guess true for water box as well, is glass sumps.
Yes.
We
Yes.
need that in this hobby, man. If I could order a custom, I mean, I guess I could. I'm sure somebody would build it for me, but it's not something you could readily get for a tank.
You know, there used to be an argument for having a custom acrylic sump because it was a lot easier to drill. But now, you know, diamond encrusted hole saws for glass are really, really easy to get. I mean, they're super cheap. One bit used to cost $100. Now on Amazon, for like $40, you can get 12 different sizes, metric or standard, you know? So it's really not that hard to drill glass should you ever need to do that. But yeah, like these tanks are really, I mean, they're covering probably like 75% of what you know, what I would consider you and me to be discerning aquarists. 75% of what we want. It's just taken care of, right? And the business of getting to the reef tank and getting it set up and getting it flowing, getting it aquascaped, that's what we're here for. I mean, granted, there's some people who really take pride in customizing a lot of different aspects, but yeah, these companies are doing an amazing job, all of them, honestly.
I agree.
Let's see. What was a couple of other features that they had in there? You know, they want to tout an improved gate valve. I don't think they have a gate valve. I think they have a diaphragm valve. But either way, a control valve for
Yeah, I
the
saw that it was
continuous,
improved.
more
Yeah.
resolution. You know, more sensitivity into the dial. Like I never had a problem.
So mine works okay. But I've always wanted to ask a Red Sea company spokesperson about that because that's a very intentional decision, right? I don't think there's any issue with them using a gate valve from a patent or, you know, whatever. There's nothing stopping them, I would imagine. So it's a very intentional decision to go with a diaphragm type valve. And so when I saw that they had a new and improved one, it was like they were sticking to their guns on that. And they think those tanks through and through very thoroughly. Like they don't just make these decisions lightly. So I would love to hear what the intention, what is their reasoning for sticking with that? Because I do find them somewhat tweaky, you know, when they start to gum up a bit. So you got to clean them.
So
But
for those of you that don't know, what is in America called a bean animal overflow, which we have longer called a continuous siphon overflow, keeping that siphon going. God, I think it was like a Brian Edward out of North Carolina was one of the first guys I knew to put that together, but it was on our secret clubhouse forum. First, second rules, you don't talk about it. Long since defunct. But yeah, I don't know why they use a diaphragm valve, and so I use a gate valve on my larger system because that was totally custom. But a diaphragm valve, not used to have this here, but a diaphragm valve just basically squeezes two sections together, and over a long period of time, you get buildup on every surface of the aquarium that's exposed to water. So what I'll do is I'll close it down all the way in hopes to like kind of squish out the gum and then open it up all the way to try to, but I only have to do that like, I don't know, once a year, a couple times a year. Depends on how much I'm feeding.
I find it to be easily serviceable. So I thought maybe that's one of their reasons, because you can go in there with your Allen wrench, unscrew the stainless screws, pop it out, clean it, screw it back together. You're back in business.
Have you done that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I've literally never opened up my diaphragm valve because I've mostly used gate valves for the continuous siphon overflow.
I mean, you know, you can get a gate valve with quick disconnects these days where you just unscrew it, pop it out. So those are serviceable as well. But, you know, so I thought maybe this is a little easier to deal with. I don't know. I've always been curious about that. It's a unique design or I guess engineering choice. But it works. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it.
I would be curious to know and just really, talk to some of the lead designers on this if they really engineered that diaphragm valve or found something on the market that worked. Because when you see something like that, my first thought, and this is not a reflection on Red Sea, but probably a lot of other companies, is that, oh, their supplier just kind of made some improvements so they could say, oh, we have a better valve now. But who knows? We don't really know. I haven't had nearly enough FaceTime with like any of these company reps for quite a long time. What was another thing about it? Yeah, it's got a. We were chatting just a little bit earlier today, and you said you don't like high clarity glass. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring it up. I'm probably in the minority about this, but
that's okay. I mean, you have reasonable, rational reasons for it.
So another reason I went with a custom aquarium was because I would have readily bought another, ready to put together tank like a Red Sea or something. I do not like the ultra clear glass because maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just a bit of an ogre or something when I clean my tank, but I scratch the hell out of it. And I've always avoided acrylic tanks because, especially when you're dealing with coralline algae and everything else, I just want to go in there with like a steel razor or like even the metal blade on the Tunzi magnet cleaner and just go to town, right? I don't want to be dealing with like a plastic scraper like you would in an acrylic tank. And I've had, 2 tanks with the ultra clear glass where it's great. I mean, is it more clear? Sure. But the minute you scratch it, that scratch really is an eyesore and subtracts any benefit of the clarity of the glass. And in my opinion, humble opinion, for my own tank, if I was in a peninsula tank where you're looking through the tank, I would see the benefit in having clear glass. But if you have a back black wall, regular tank against a wall, I don't know if you would be able to really pick up on the difference unless an ultra clear and a regular glass tank were side by side. You'd probably see the difference. But if that tank showed up at your door with regular glass, you put it in and you just live with it, I don't think you'd really notice the difference.
This is a true fact. Hashtag true fact. We lived so just kind of backtrack a little bit. There's a lot of additives that are used in glass to make it, stronger or easier to work with. And one of the most common ones in just structural glass is iron, and that helps to give it strength. So if you want a clearer aquarium, you take out some of that iron, thereby making it softer. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least seven high clarity glass tanks, and there's some very fine scratches on a couple of them. But you're right, depending on your how you maintain your aquarium, it's a lot easier to get a small accidental scratch in the high clarity, which also is by default also softer. And in my case, usually those are so shallow that I can't see them unless I'm looking for them. And back to your point too, like if you have a regular glass tank, you're like, that's clear enough, right? And then when you have a high clarity glass tank, the thing about the high clarity glass is it shows every bit of algae. It shows the lack of transparency in the water. It shows the coloration of your water. So unless your water is crystal clear and your glass is super clean, you're not going to really get that benefit. But definitely for my peninsula tanks, when I give them a good wipe down, and I'm always running like a small amount of carbon to keep organics from building up, it looks like air. It looks like air. So for your tank, did you specifically request regular glass?
I may regret that decision because it is 3/4 inch glass. I've never
that's
owned...
thick for your 180.
Well, yeah, this Reefer 65 is the same thickness, and I'm a little nervous.
19 millimeters for everyone outside of America.
Yeah, which these new Red Sea tanks I noticed are the same thickness. So all the other tanks would have bracing at the top that I've owned in the past, so they had thinner glass, thinner regular glass. So I'm a little nervous that, you know, when you get into the 19 millimeter 3/4 inch glass, maybe I'll be eating my own words and I'll be like, oh man, that green tint is really apparent. But
I don't think you're going to notice it
no,
unless you have a tank right next to it to compare it to. And back to your point, unless you have a peninsula style tank, you're just not really going to notice. It's funny, like you notice when you do have it, but you won't notice if you don't have it, for the most part.
yeah, we'll see. I did the armored seams, I did regular glass, and the hope is I can just go to town on it with like a metal blade once a week.
Is that what they're called? Armored seams?
No, that's what I call it. I think.
No. That's what we're calling it from now on. Because I have noticed, and I don't think it's been discussed enough. This is what we're here for: is discerning reefers. Is my Red Sea has armored seams, which is like a kind of like a plastic wedge at the bottom, so I can bounce that magnet scraper all the way down and just never worry about it. But on the water box, it's like an exposed seam, you know, so I got to be a lot more careful when I get down to those edges. Armored seams, that's what we're calling them.
I think I've heard that term mostly used with reef savvy tanks, so hopefully they don't have a trademark on that. But and I did not get a reef savvy tank. That was a little too upscale for me. I think they make amazing tanks, but it just wasn't in my budget. Plus, I think they have a long lead time.
Did you see these armored seams on this tank? I mean, I'd assume that they have it because I have an older Red Sea. It's impossible to tell from the photographs.
Yeah, my 625 has it on the bottom.
Right. I only have it on the bottom of my own. But I did see a friend of mine got a Planet aquarium very similar to the one I have. Mine's 30 by 30 by 8 feet long. He got it 36 by 36, but then he had the armored seams on all sides, on all corners and the bottom. I was like, man, how is this a thing and no one's talking about it? Armored seams. Yeah, that's what we're calling them for now.
Yeah, that's Planet is the one making my tank. So that's whatever you saw in his tank is what I guess is what I'm getting, hopefully.
Bottom and edges and like the sides. Yeah. Oh, very cool.
Maybe I hope so. I hope I didn't just specify just the sides. I'll have to double check that.
Very cool. Yeah, you know, it's very interesting. I have learned so much about general glass tank construction and design by having tanks from everybody: Red Sea, Waterbox, Cade, ProClear, Innovative Marine, and Planet. And when you're at the Reef Aquarium shows or you're just looking at pictures online, all you see is a glass box, right? You just see a glass box and you can kind of notice the overflow. But like, you know, for example, I noticed on my 5-foot Reefer, Peninsula, XL, whatever the number is, the end glass is a little bit thinner than the side panes. And I noticed because my magnet is a lot stronger, a lot more effective at that end than it is on the panes. And there's just like, between that and the armored seams, there's just a lot of little nuance that you just don't know you want or don't want until they're spotlighted by, you know, podcasts and stuff. Very cool, man. I love how you and I can just totally riff about general aquarium construction based on
armored seams.
Armored seams based on the announcement of one particular tank. So we're discussing the Red Sea, but we're talking about so much more at the same time. Yeah. I love it. I love it, man. So cool. This is my therapy. I love it so much. It does me good. What are some other things that they had on there? The slide out control panel.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Very cool. So definitely check out the write-up I did on Reef Builders. Should be posted by the time that this video/podcast is shared. But on the right side, there is basically like a sliding panel that you can put all of your controllers and I guess power supplies and maybe some dosing pumps onto to keep everything in place, but also more accessible. So I guess historically, you know, some of us older reefers would have just put these on the inside panes of the stand, or we would have put it on the inside doors, but then you have to worry about where the cords are going. If it's inside the stand, you can't really access it so much. Cade really like set the bar pretty high by kind of building one section completely on the outside on one side of their stands. Really, really awesome work with a built-in like power control center, maybe a little bit more than most people need. And then you've seen Waterbox kind of be inspired, take some inspiration from the Cade with the kind of a side control panel. I don't know if they had the built-in power strips though, but the Red Sea version with the slide-out panel, so you get the best of both worlds. It's kind of in the tank. You can slide it out for accessibility. I'm a gearhead, man. Just sign me up. That thing's awesome.
Yeah, I give them a lot of credit for. I mean, they have thought a lot through what a reefer needs early on, right? I had one of their E170 tanks, and yes, I like using controllers, but it came with a power station, right, with like buttons, so I could with little pictures, right? Yeah, and I thought, for your average hobbyist, that's great, right? Like, hey, turn your lights off, turn your return pump off. I'm doing maintenance.
This is before everything was controllable, right? Yeah. This is so, you know, having kind of a distributed power center with these switches. Yeah, it makes aquarium maintenance way easier.
Well, back in the day, their max tanks had timers for the lights.
Yep.
You know,
I mean, they were mechanical timers, which more reliable than digital. You know, could be argued. But yeah, I think there's a lot of innovation there. The only thing I wasn't thrilled about is, you know, in the Cade, it's totally separate from the stand. It's outside. Yeah. You open a separate, I call it suicide door, the side door, but there's no exposure to moisture or whatever. And in my Red Sea 5-foot peninsula, there's a totally dedicated chamber for where you could put a chiller or anything that kind of needs to stay dry, and that's where I put all my power supplies.
Yeah, same.
And by controllers, I'm not talking aquarium controller at all. I'm talking pump controllers, light controllers, dosing controllers, whatever. So. Yeah, I wonder if that's just something that's not included in the documentation for the new Reefer S series, if there's a panel that can go up to kind of separate the wet, humid, you know, filtration side from the chiller and controller and power control center side. I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to put together, but you know, they've thought of everything. So I really hope there's a panel there that you can include to separate the humidity from the stuff that needs to stay dry.
Yeah, I do like that. I have the same situation where that's separate compartment, which they often advertise as a place for your chiller. Mm-hmm. I put some of that Panduit stuff, which is like wire management.
Oh yeah.
I put that in there. I mounted everything, and it's so nice and tidy.
Oh God. You know, when people visit the studio, rarely. It's a rare occurrence. You're welcome. I can't wait till you can come out and we can do this in person.
Hey, I'm getting vaccinated next week, so
I got my non-COVID vaccine yesterday. Just catching up on my non-COVID vaccine, just catching up on tetanus and whatever the cocktail is. So yeah, I got a vaccine yesterday, but it wasn't COVID. Man, where was I?
Oh, when people come to the studio.
When people come to the studio, they ask me what is one of my favorite things to show, and I like to highlight that one of my favorite things is what you can't see. I have worked very hard to put together like baskets for power supplies and really keep things out of sight, but still within reach. And it's just, God, if I had wires and stuff like for everything that you can see, man, I went so far as to buy, here's a pro tip for you cable management enthusiasts. Buy custom extension or power cables, not extension cords, but the power cord that plugs into your power supply. You can buy these for $2 to $3 in 6 inches or 12 inches in any color you want. And when you don't have 6 feet of black power cord to tie up every freaking wear, oh my Lord, that's like 50% of the battle right there. It's incredible. Like I'll never, if I ever did custom setups, but every one of my tanks, I have these custom power cords. That, again, I order for like $2 or $3. They're super cheap, but you can get them any color you want. By and large, all of mine are white, but I think in a couple rare cases, I use a red one for like heater and a blue one for the pump, and you get a yellow one for the light. Like it's amazing. Well, yeah, when people come, like my favorite thing is what you can't see. It's just showcasing the aquarium.
Yeah, I love that Panduit stuff. I use that quite a bit. I know people are all about these boards that you hide the stuff behind and it's like front facing. But I feel like if you've got this nice deep stand and then you put this face in front with all your cool little gadgets on display, then you also make it inconvenient to get to the back of it. It looks neat, I guess, but for me, I love that. Maybe it's from my computer days. It's like you can throw that around your stuff and then tuck all your wires into it. It's kind of a pain when you got to like pull a pump out or replace something, but it's worth
a fine art.
Yeah, yeah. It takes a little bit of effort, but in your day to day, and it's just it keeps everything neat. I mean, I feel like you're less prone to finding some kind of disaster or something wrong inside your sump if you just keep everything where it's supposed to be.
Not to mention, like, if you have a snake pit of cables and wires, when you open up just your stand, you're not going to be motivated to do the work that you actually need to do because it's just stressful to see all these cables and power supplies just resting every single where. And so for me, it's definitely like a Zen thing to make sure to keep all the cables clean, to keep the power supplies like the studio could be flooded with about 2 feet of water and nothing would happen.
Yeah.
2 feet of water, my tanks would just be running just fine because all the outlets are about 4 feet high. There's nothing lower than that, you know. I have a couple controller boards, but everything else is just kind of like, out of sight, but not like inaccessible. That's also super important.
Yeah, if you open up my cabinet, you see no wires, you see dosing containers. That's it. You know.
Dude, one of my next videos is literally going to be showing off 3 different kind of like dosing setups, and it's just so awesome. You mentioned that, like, because you open it up. I got 3 different stands. Like, you open it up, you see nothing except the dosing bottles because you want to keep those front and center to make sure that they haven't run out. That's super important.
That's exactly where I was going. Where maybe I thought it was just a me thing. Where when I open up the cabinet, I don't want to be distracted by anything else except those containers and go, oh, okay, I got to fill those. You know?
Yes.
And I'm still looking for a solution on how. And this is for, I guess, the controller people. How can I get alerts on when I need to refill? Because I've had issues with...
That's an easy fix. Easy fix. No controller required. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Most of the newer smart-ish dosing pumps, GHL Doser 2, absolutely the Ecotech Marine Versa, and what's that thing called? Dadgummit, the eCoral Doser. I think it's just called the eCoral Doser. Obviously, as long as you calibrate them well, you can tell them how much fluid is in the container, and it will send you alert. But you know, when you're getting close, and you can tell it when to alert you, like when you're down to 10% or you're down to 5%. So yeah, what dosers are you using right now?
So I had a GHL doser on my E170, but I'm using the Neptune dose on this one, and I know I can reset.
Never heard of it.
I know I can reset the volume in my reservoir, but I'm sure it's just me. I need to do some decent.
Oh, you don't want to spend $200 on custom dosing containers that have built-in float switches to let you know?
I have that container, and the optical sensors have failed on it. So, and I thought,
how does an optical float sensor fail?
I don't know.
I guess it's not a float sensor, but how does an optical sensor fail?
I don't know if it's corrosion from the harshness of the chemicals, or I don't know. It seems to be a somewhat common issue. I just attributed it to the optical sensors that, you know, in their design or something. And they're not easy to replace because the wiring is like, I don't know. Again, maybe I'm wrong on this, but
That is an awesome idea. That is an awesome product. Going with the optical sensors is hypothetically like the best route to prevent the chemicals from interacting from the float with the float switch.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know what we're talking about, Neptune Systems built a really thoughtful dosing container that what was it, hold like a gallon?
I want to say 2 liters per reagent.
So roughly
about
roughly half a gallon per container, and they have the optical float switches to let you know when you're empty. But it was like $200. Like, 99, dude. I celebrate that all day long, especially if it can work with other things. Like, it doesn't actually need to connect to your Apex. I mean, honestly, like it could just have like a tiny little battery to just give me a little beep, and a different tone for each container. That's funny that you have that container to solve that problem, but they failed on you. That sucks, man.
Well, it's okay. I mean, I actually still like the container for what it is. It serves its purpose, but I've seen these new float sensors where the actual electronic sensor's on the outside.
Yep.
And it's magnetically attached. I don't know if there's something like that. If somebody's an Apex expert and they know of a way to send an alert when the unit has dosed 1,500 mLs, and then I can reset that alert, I'm sure there's a way. Let me know, because I got burned by that actually 2 weeks ago, man. The one acropora I have in my tank just turned doo-doo brown pale, and I was like, all right, something's up. And then, you start to go through that troubleshooting, and I open up the cabinet door, and my DDR is empty. There's no
it's so
bionic in there.
Funny how we automate some of these processes, right? But I have dosing on a few different tanks, but you still have to make sure that you have fluid left, especially, nowadays, like you're dosing so much to the tank. Evan, who is, my helper here at the studio, he's more than a helper, but he caught that one of the dosing containers was empty. So it's really important to keep those front and center. It's funny how automation only goes so far. You still need to pay attention and make sure that your dosing containers are full, which is why I love to use food coloring in my, containers, because the difference between a container is totally full and totally empty of clear fluid is very hard to tell. You really have to look. But when it's filled with because I make all my own bulk stuff with Brightwell Aquatics dry additives, I just add a little food coloring. But you could really tell. You can really, really tell. Very cool. I love how this conversation is just kind of weaving back and forth on just like the Red Sea Reefer S, but we're just talking about so much more associated with the features and the details of general tank maintenance and construction. Let's see. So the Red Sea Reefer S 850 is 5,300, 180 gallons. Red Sea Reefer S 1000 is 210 gallons, and it's 5,999.
Did they announce when they would ship, like when you could order?
Well, as of this recording has not been announced, because we got that little birdie who's letting us do this. By the time this is published, that will be available for sure. Just like every other new kind of higher profile product, it will be limited quantities. To help. They're just testing the waters, but it'll be limited quantities. So first batches are probably going to run out. But I don't really know, but. I love this arms race that's taking place, with Red Sea and Waterbox and Cade. Planet Aquarium kind of has their own pond with, more larger, more custom stuff. Invader has their own sandbox where they're offering a lot of different dimensions that are a little bit on the smaller side. And then you got ProClear. Let's not forget about ProClear. They're coming up on their 25th anniversary. If you don't know ProClear Aquatics Systems, they've actually been building the stuff for a lot of other companies for like a really long time, like All Glass Aquarium, but then turned into Aqueon. But yeah, I think that was the first. That wasn't the first, but that was one of the larger metal frame stands that I got. That's currently my fish only aquarium. So it's really cool to see. The pace, the cadence of these aquariums coming out every few years, and every time they're trying to a little arms race, trying to one up each other on how to make the tank more compelling.
Well, it's just funny to me that, I'd say, back in the day when we were doing this, the everything included aquariums, we would always talk hobbyists out of those. Like, no, you're better off just putting it together yourself.
What do you have in mind?
DIY, right?
What would you call it? What would be an all-in-one solution before the first Red Sea Max?
That's a good question.
The BioCube? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I feel like there were other examples. I mean, even
Oceanic, maybe. That was the closest thing to an ecosystem, right? Because they had the tank, they had the stand, they had the glass sump, and they had the very funky protein skimmer. that was the extent of an ecosystem for 1998.
Yeah, no, I'm not thinking that far back. I guess even the early Red Seas, they were actually really nice systems, but a lot of times people would see like the price tag, for what was, I think, like a 50-gallon tank, and they'd say, just go get a 40-gallon breeder, blah, 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 blah. But I feel like these days that argument is moot, I mean, again, going a bit back to the plumbing and everything else, but it's just, if you're a pro reefer, if you want to, I don't know what that necessarily means, but like somebody who's plumbed their own tanks, I guess, who've set up tanks from scratch multiple times, I don't think any of those type of people would look at any of these kits and scoff at them.
No. I mean, it's just you and me. We're literally talking about ourselves. Like, I look at this, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to have just more freedom and flexibility to reef, to actually take care of the corals. The reason we made our own stuff because everything available was crap.
Yeah.
Like even if you bought like a all glass aquarium or a Perfecto aquarium with the stand, it was like $200 for the overflow kit. That was just the plumbing that went inside the overflow box, which is kind of silly. It should have been included. But then you still had to plumb it from the tank down to whatever sump solution you have. So yeah, man, this is one of those things that has definitely fueled and accelerated the reef aquarium hobby like no other. Yeah. And I welcome it with open arms. Super duper cool. And I just want to see just more of this all-in-oneness so we can, there's times when you really need to build something from scratch when you're doing something tricky or something really kind of outside the box. And there's other times where I just want a tank full of euphyllias. I don't need any bells and whistles for my soft coral tank or my fish tank or my euphyllia garden. It's just kind of, I like it. I like it a lot. The only thing that I see really lacking with these all-in-one tanks is at least the option for a really good screen top. I think Red Sea has a DIY offering. The Cade comes with one. They're not good enough. I'm sorry, they're just not. Like, even if you have experience making the Red Sea screen top, it's like $3 worth of materials on a $6,000 aquarium. Like, yo, have you not seen what's on the market right now as far as like these ready-made, like acrylic with clear screens and doors? Like, it's just not enough. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I agree. I did the Red Sea kit, which is like a window screen, and it was a pain in the butt to put together. And then you try to get like something accommodating designed into it to do, to feed your fish. Well, again, you asked me about why I went the route I did with my tank and the lower water line and everything else. I hate screen tops, and maybe part of that is my experience with the screen top that I had. Some of those acrylic ones that have like a feeding box or whatever. What do you call it? A little, you can pull it out.
A door.
Door. There we go.
That's a door.
Yeah. I mean, I get it to some degree because even those are custom ordered based on what your lighting setup is and where your lights are clamped. So Red Sea can't exactly predict that, right? They don't know what you're going to do. I don't know, but I agree. Maybe there's some middle ground there.
I'm sorry, but the rolled up DIY solution is trash. If you make a perfect square, no problem. It'll be rigid. The moment you try to get around a light mount or an overflow box or try to add a door, it just totally falls apart. And then trying to like get that spline in to like hold the screen, it's not okay. It's not okay. It's not up to the standard of the aquarium itself.
they could build one of these badass acrylic ones for their lighting system, and then if you're the guy that says, "Nah, I want to use radions and I want to use a different mount and I'm going to do it this way or that way," then there's still that aftermarket, right? There's still the custom guys that'll build that for you. But
do you know why they don't include it?
why?
Do you know what drives this whole economy of all-in-one tanks? Shipping and logistics. How many of these can fit into a container? You know, the 6-foot Reefer S 850 is not 6 feet long. It's 71 inches. Right? So they can really make a complete, total usage of shipping containers. Like, I don't know exactly how they're packed, but when you see a 6-foot tank is 71 inches, not 72, or the 8-foot tank, the 7-foot tank is 83 inches, not 84. It's the logistics, the logistics of shipping like a flat pack, real acrylic screen top, it just doesn't make sense. But what if you can ship a bunch of tubes that are a little bit more malleable, like that is one of those weird things that's kind of like shaping the availability of products in the reef aquarium industry that you don't think about. And this is one of those elements, the logistics of shipping that glass from China. They're all made probably, 10 square mile radius or 10-mile radius. They're all made, in certain regions, not too far from the glass foundry. I think glass would be called a foundry. It's the logistics of bringing those to market that has a huge impact on the final price. And I think that's why we're not seeing any mass-produced mesh screen tops at all.
I'm also curious about, so acrylic is a petroleum product, and petroleum products are very expensive outside of the U.S. So you don't see a lot of acrylic aquariums.
No, you don't.
And I think that probably helped push them into building the glass sumps, for example, and other things.
That's a good point. Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, you wouldn't have to make it out of acrylic, right? Like that, you could make it out of plastic.
ABS plastic. Like it has to hold nothing.
And that's petroleum too. But I mean, the lid on their overflow box is made out of that material, and so. I don't know. I just wonder about that too. It's always funny when you see like Euro tanks and the overflow box is glass, and here we always got the acrylic boxes. And
fun fact: the overflow box on the Red Sea is acrylic, and the overflow box, my water box, is glass.
Really?
Yeah. And the only reason that matters is that you can't glue frags to a glass overflow box. Because I've tried. It's so funny. And, again, back to like these nuances of different aquariums. The innovative marines have a whole acrylic back layer just to make the comb for the overflow, for the filter teeth. So it's easier to glue an entire piece of acrylic on the entire back for the comb screen, whatever you want to call it, than it is to just kind of delicately glue in, something kind of removable. But yeah, so I think, did you have anything more to say on the Reefer S or kind of this line of all-in-one aquariums in general?
No, I like I said, I think, I hope other manufacturers take note. I'd love to see more glass sumps. I like glass overflow boxes because you can scrape them clean, right? Scraping up acrylic overflow box is a pain. I like the move to using aluminum for stands. It seems like,
dude, that's inevitable. That is on a long enough timeline. Everything but solid hardwood is not going to last as long as the glass. Right? In the worst conditions, whether it's plywood, particle board, marine grade, I don't care. You subject it to the highest amount of humidity. It's not going to last as long as the glass tank. And another thing too is like I don't want to harp on Red Sea, but like it's a premium tank with a 3-year warranty. Does that sound like enough? Does that sound like enough to you? You invest all this time and money in 3 years, you can grow a substantial reef. I don't think it's enough. If you're a fly-by-nighter, glass and aquarium stand maker, like, whatever, give them a 1-year warranty. But 3 years, I think it's more like it's harder to track warranties after 3 years than it is to offer like a sincere 5-year warranty.
Yeah, and I think it's tricky too. I mean, I would like to see longer warranties, but a lot of times you look at the issues people have with aquariums, and you kind of have to wonder, did the person install it right? Was the tank level?
Yeah.
Is the floor bouncy? Is the floor
the
properly
floor settled?
Secured? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I guess
what's the humidity in your house like? It's like if your wood stand's falling apart, but you got 70% humidity. Yeah, maybe that's an issue too, right? So.
Yeah, no, I guess in light of that, I think a 3-year warranty is reasonable compromise between 1 and 5 years. But clearly, every aquarium over a certain size in the future is going to have some kind of metal frame stand. Like, it won't even be okay to offer a wood stand for any tank over 3 feet, especially since, we know how to make this modular stuff. So, yeah, really cool news from the Red Sea Reefer. I love how we were able to expand on the meaning and, the value of some of these different features without just talking about the tank itself. That's something that you are uniquely equipped to join me in that discussion, especially because you're not in the industry. You've never been in the industry. You've just been a diehard hobbyist for most of your life, and I think that's what brings a special touch to the reef therapy sessions.
I like your, by the way, I like your Vernon, or Varon, man, did I say Vernon? Varon books in the background there.
Yeah, I heard that there's a super limited edition version of them that's like leather bound. I've only heard of them, but I've never seen them. So I actually have a couple different copies of those, but I think that's my original copy from 2001. And you know what? I downloaded the entire Coral of the World website with a site sucker. Just pulled down everything. I remember telling Charlie, he was like, oh man, but that would be like a few gigs. I'm like, yeah, but it's a lot lighter, when you're on a dive boat in the middle of the Indian Ocean or whatever, than bringing the books along. So I'm really glad I actually have the whole website like as a file on my computer. But yeah, dude, super awesome discussion. Thank you for talking about not just the Red Sea Reefer S aquariums, but like what do these features mean to the experienced aquarist and to the newbie aquarist. And I think we're just going to cut it off there and take a little break and record another one, but that'll be next week. So, Mark, thank you so much for joining us on the sessions of reef therapy. Oh, man, I feel so much better after we do these. And looking forward to next week.
I'm going to start laying down on the couch back there like a true therapy session,
You see how I didn't post up in front of my tank, so I didn't give you that...
complex about my background?
Yeah, exactly. Although this is a 35-year-old bag of Instant Ocean that I framed. I had to pay like $35 on eBay for like a used aquarium lot. This thing had salt in it, and I was totally planning to just cut it open, but it came with some test kits, some old hydrometer new in the box. Oh my god, I love some of this old stuff. But that's for another discussion. So make sure to subscribe to the Reef Builders channel. Give us just a little bit of time, and we're gonna come up with a logo and syndicate all this stuff in a podcast form so you guys can digest it very well. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode. Later, guys.